Many people think hoarding is simply being messy, but in psychology, it refers to a persistent difficulty in discarding possessions, regardless of their actual value. From a psychological perspective, this behavior is linked to how the brain processes attachment, memory, and emotional value assigned to everyday objects. In many cases, hoarding develops gradually, influenced by emotional attachment, fear of loss, and difficulty making decisions about what to keep or discard. In this video, we will explore the main psychological reasons behind hoarding and understand how these patterns form and grow over time. One of the main psychological reasons people develop hoarding behavior is emotional attachment, where objects start to carry personal meaning that goes beyond their actual function or usefulness. Instead of seeing things as just physical objects, the brain starts linking them to emotional experiences such as memories, relationships, achievements, or important life moments. This means an ordinary object can suddenly remind someone of a specific person, a past version of themselves, or a meaningful moment they don't want to forget. Because of this emotional connection, the brain no longer treats the object as unnecessary, even if it has no practical use in daily life anymore. This is why letting go can feel uncomfortable, because it is not just about losing an item, but losing the memory or meaning attached to it. Over time, this emotional attachment becomes one of the strongest foundations of hoarding behavior. A second major psychological reason people hoard is fear of loss, often connected to a scarcity mindset, where individuals believe that useful things might become hard to replace in the future. This mindset makes people feel that if they throw something away, they might regret it later, or not be able to get it again when they need it. This thinking is linked to survival instincts in the brain, where people are naturally wired to avoid losing resources they might need in the future. Because of this, even low-value or replaceable items can feel important, simply because they provide a sense of security. This creates a habit of keeping things just in case, even when they are no longer needed in everyday life. Over time, this fear of loss reinforces hoarding behavior, because keeping items feels safer than letting them go. A third psychological reason people develop hoarding behavior is decision fatigue, where the brain becomes overwhelmed when it has to repeatedly decide what to keep or throw away. When a person is exposed to too many items at once, the brain starts to get tired from constant evaluation, such as deciding whether something is useful, valuable, or unnecessary. Because of this mental pressure, it becomes easier for the brain to avoid making decisions altogether, which leads to simply keeping the items instead of sorting them. This avoidance is not laziness, but a natural response of the brain trying to reduce stress from too many small decisions over time. As a result, items continue to accumulate because each decision is postponed instead of being processed and resolved. This is how decision fatigue becomes one of the hidden psychological factors behind long-term hoarding behavior. The fourth psychological reason people develop hoarding behavior is anxiety and the need for control, where keeping objects creates a feeling of stability in their environment. For some people, having physical items around them reduces feelings of uncertainty because the environment feels more predictable and within their control. When anxiety increases, the brain often looks for external ways to feel secure, and possessions can become a source of comfort or emotional safety. This is why letting go of items can sometimes feel uncomfortable, because it creates a sense of losing control over one's environment. As a result, people may continue keeping items not because they need them, but because it helps them feel emotionally or mentally secure. This need for control becomes a hidden psychological factor that reinforces hoarding behavior over time. A fifth psychological reason people develop hoarding behavior is identity attachment, where objects become linked to how a person sees themselves and their past life experiences. For many people, belongings represent different versions of themselves, such as who they were in the past, what they used to do, or the roles they once had in life. This creates a strong emotional connection, because letting go of objects can feel like letting go of a part of one's identity or personal history. As a result, people may keep items not only for memory, but because they feel the objects still represent who they are. This makes decision-making more emotional, because discarding items feels like changing or losing part of one's self-image. Over time, identity attachment becomes a strong psychological factor that reinforces hoarding behavior and makes letting go more difficult. The final psychological reason hoarding behavior becomes difficult to stop is habit reinforcement, where repeatedly keeping items slowly turns the behavior into an automatic routine over time. Each time a person chooses to keep an item instead of throwing it away, the brain learns that avoiding the decision feels easier and less stressful. Over time, this repeated pattern strengthens itself, causing the brain to automatically choose keeping items as the more comfortable response. This is how clutter can slowly build up without a person fully noticing how much the behavior has become part of their daily routine. As the habit becomes stronger, organizing or removing items can start to feel mentally exhausting, even before the process begins. This is why habit reinforcement becomes one of the long-term psychological factors that keeps hoarding behavior active and difficult to break. Hoarding behavior is not simply about being messy or lazy, because in many cases it is deeply connected to emotions, anxiety, memory, identity, and the way the brain responds to stress and attachment. Many people who struggle with hoarding are not trying to create clutter intentionally, but are often responding to emotional discomfort, fear of loss, or mental exhaustion from constant decision-making. Understanding the psychological reasons behind hoarding helps us approach the behavior with more awareness and empathy instead of judgment or misunderstanding. And by recognizing these patterns early, people can slowly build healthier habits, reduce overwhelming clutter, and create living spaces that feel more comfortable, organized, and emotionally balanced.